Welcome to Aural Hygiene. It's the podcast where we talk about caught films, educational films, and interesting documentaries. I actually haven't been saying the third part for a while because I've been focusing on the caught and the educational, but I got an email and I was like, that's interesting. I've seen this film before. We have the filmmaker today. The film is Frankenskies, getting us into the weird and wild world of chemtrails, and it's a double Matt today. Hi, hello, Matt Landman.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on. It's really cool that you've made it out of the country and that you're all the way over in Japan. I've actually been overseas to get my EMF clothing line together, so I appreciate the Asian culture. So hello.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I just as a kid, I guess I just had a I like Atlanta. It's a nice city, but I always felt the need to get out of Atlanta.
Mhm.
So, once I was out of school, I like got a little farther out, started working out South Carolina, then Maine, then Canada, and then I just ended up in Japan, and it has stuck. My roots are here. I don't know if I could like properly live in America anymore. I would, yeah. When I do get back, it's going to be a big like Rip Van Winkle experience. I'm actually looking forward to that. Could be fun, could be horrifying. I don't know.
I had similar experience. I grew up in DC, Washington DC area, and I would imagine I had a similar experience as you. We're almost the same age, and I ended up in Vancouver, Canada. I don't know if you were over on that side of Canada, but now I'm pretty far away in Ashland, Oregon. I mean, almost as far away as I can be and still be in the continental United States from where I originated.
Yeah, I had a wild party weekend in Seattle once, but that's neither here nor there. About your movie, I actually did see it a few years ago and had a rewatch for this, of course. But so I was glad to hear from you. And could you give us sort of the TV guide summary of your film?
Frankenskies, like Frankenstein, but skies, is an 80-minute expose documentary on weather modification history. The historical chronological timeline starts in 1922 and takes you to modern day. But by the time you get to the 50s, it's self-evident that the weather can and likely is engineered and controlled by the Air Force or whoever the powers that be. So the weather modification history aspect of it shows how that evolution came to be with military stock footage, taking their footage that they made and literally putting their feet in their mouths, like showing what they're capable of and what they're likely still doing. And once we get to modern day, the aerosols that they spray from jets, it takes us to a new concept called geoengineering, which is saving us from global warming by spraying the skies with chemicals to dim the sun. And all of that gets wrapped up in this concept called chemtrails, which is aerosolized chemicals or metallics being sprayed from jets in the atmosphere for different purposes.
I guess, and I guess we'll take a little bit like the movie and hit the history. In the 1920s, I guess what I'm thinking of is San Diego experiments.
Well, 1914 was San Diego. I'm not sure if there's footage of that. I don't know exactly when the video camera started really being prevalent, but I'm not sure if there's actually footage out there of Hatfield, Professor Hatfield, Charles Hatfield, 1914 San Diego. He built a tower. He was hired by the city of San Diego to try to make it rain. He said, yeah, I think I can do it. He built a tower like 35 feet tall and sprayed chemical haze into storms that were coming by and made the clouds empty. The clouds dumped so much rain, the deluge made the storms burst, and he was sued by the city of San Diego for the damages. That was 1914. He could make it rain. So when we're talking like, oh, it's a drought, and oh, what are we going to do, and forest fires and all this stuff, no one's ever saying, hey, we can make it rain, and that technology is over a century old, and that's just then. The footage starts in the 1920s. 1922, I believe, Frankenstein's footage.
Yeah, 1914 is like you could have shot some film, but it would have been quite difficult. That's, and I just recently, I've been really interested in like early 20th century history recently. So I was reading a book about the creation of Hollywood and just how bound you were to filming. they got the freedom finally, and then sound came in, and they had a few years where they had no freedom of film again. So 1914, it would have been quite difficult to get like like on the ground footage.
Hmm. Well, not to get totally off subject, but I've been doing a little studying of Hollywood, and what's really fascinating is when we first got VHS tapes and the potential for mind control on a like global level, because people are sitting at home repeatedly watching something for the first time. You couldn't sit down and repeatedly watch something over and over and over until the VHS came out. So seeing what came out first on VHS and how that could manipulate the society essentially is kind of interesting. Cultural engineering, what have you, through that,
Yeah, I would. I'm not sure if it's even nefarious, but yeah, Back to the Future and Ghostbusters are films that obviously have a major part on, of my psyche, right? And in high school, maybe same for you because we're about the same age, but me and my friends and I, we would just speak in an endless series of like Simpson metaphors, like to an outsider, it wouldn't make any sense. So, just on that base level, yeah, all of us really get affected by what we watch. Since I've been podcasting the past 2 years, I'm usually active watching now, which obviously it's more work. I have the movie in the left side of my screen, the right, I'm like taking notes the whole time. So if you are worried about that sort of thing, I think that's a real good defense against it because you're always active watching. You're not just being, hypnotized by the television so much.
Well, for sure. Nowadays, if I'm watching anything, I'm doing research, it seems, more than not. And I did have a friend or two that we spoke in Simpsons code. It was pretty real back then, for sure. We would even jump and record things with the VHS and fast forward through the commercials and rewatch, the Simpsons, and have these things memorized, folks. It was real.
Oh yeah, I had the 8 hour tape where I had done the, I actually edited the commercials myself, watching it live. In retrospect, it's like, wow, I wish well, not that I have my VHS and or watching them anyway, but like I'm like, I should have left the commercials in there. That's becomes fascinating 20 years later. Which
still
you
have that would be amazing.
Yeah, you can go do that on YouTube. Actually, just while we're on the nostalgia trips, a couple of things I really did like about your film. One nostalgia and one not is this podcast usually looks at older educational films. So the evolving TVs were fantastic. And just trying to think of like that technology and when you chose to go to laptop was interesting. That was about I guess it went to computers in about 1995 in the film or so.
And it also went from black and white to color when color came out as well.
Right. And then when you watch the film, this is sometimes a little jarring when you put on a documentary, but I do think it's effective that the narration is pretty minimal.
Narration. I hate narration. I'm
Yeah.
a film major and a filmmaker and a film critic, and I never really liked documentaries, and I never wanted to make documentaries, and I hate usually. I mean, in Frankenskies 2, I'm making a sequel, Frankenskies 2: Climate Change, and it's an easy way out to be like, hey, this is me, this is my story, look at me go, I'm the hero, everybody look at me. But I can't really stand that kind of thing, and so there was no narration to Frankenskies, and that is very unique for a documentary. It's hard to pull off. Documentaries are hard in and of itself because they're so dry usually with information. I love Frankenskies. It's my movie. I suggest anyone sit down and watch the first 10, 15 minutes. When you get to JFK and then Lyndon B. Johnson, you think about, wow, like right after JFK died, Lyndon B. Johnson is like grinding his teeth when he says, when we control the weather, control the world. He must have been onto something. You don't just say these things, right? All of it was history in the making. And if you can just watch the first little bit of Frankenskies and see how the unravelings of the chronology, you can definitely realize that it's at least worth looking up all the time to see what could potentially be going on in the skies.
Yeah, actually, I guess that's a good place to. I wanted to throw in some of my personal experience. So in terms of trails and things, I haven't. No, I'm talking about my skies in Nagano, of course. Since 2020, I've seen very few lines in the sky around here, which I guess that's good. Before that, for about 2 or 3 years, yeah, I would find a chessboard in the sky like at least once a month, because I remember talking to a coworker. This would have been about 2017, 2018. So in the office, he's sitting at a computer and there's a door like 2 meters away. And I'm like, I was saying something about, trails in the sky or chemtrails. I knew the term already. He's like, that's not a thing. I was like, just go look outside. And he like wouldn't do it. He just had to move 2 meters, look up. That's all. I mean, it was like, crystal, well, not crystal clear because there was lines that day, but you could see the jets moving and making them. It's like, well, I saw that happened, and I saw this several occasions in Japan. I'd say about 2015 to 2020. But since then, interestingly, not so much. I got a friend in Tokyo. He's still seeing them. Sometimes he'll just send me pictures from his phone. So, hey, look what I found today.
Mm-hmm. So the people that don't want to look and won't even just look, even though it's just going to take them a few seconds and a nod of their head, it's a cognitive dissonance. Some of those cognitive dissonance are so deep, it's like a brick wall. Nobody wants to have their essentially their values dismantled or potentially dismantled or even subjected to dismantling. And then also for the chemtrails, it's kind of a long rabbit hole and a story in and of itself, but I believe that they're changing the way that they do things. So when we see chemtrails, usually we're like, oh yeah, it's that big line in the sky, but now there's actually the shorter trails and the medium trails, and there's different stuff going on. And they could just have like drones going over with shorter stuff going on, and you may not necessarily think that it's a chemtrail, but anything in the sky nowadays is a chemtrail, even a short one. So I'll explain. In the 60s, especially, the engines started to evolve, okay, and become more efficient. And now you have Rolls-Royce involved, and General Electric is pretty much being beat out by these Rolls-Royce, really sustainable, closed loop. They keep the engines very maintained, and for life, this Rolls-Royce engines are amazing. And they're like 2 tons of titanium steel. And what they are these internalized fans. They're like propellers, but even more efficient. And they create lift over wings by pushing air. There's no heat involved. There's just a spinning fan. Okay, so when you can start to understand that, you start to realize that, oh, well, their story of heat and humidity doesn't add up and all that sort of stuff. And now I know it's rare when you see a plane with nothing coming out of it, but that's now normal. That's now a normal plane with no chemtrails. So I don't know what your skies or what you're seeing sometimes or whatever, or what you're seeing normally, but there's a lot of different things going on that I'm becoming more learned about, and short, medium, long trails. They're precursor gases. There's different things are being mixed together. And I know that's kind of like deeper down the rabbit hole for people who are just even now like learning about the subject, because there's so much to it: the who, what, why, where, when, how, and how can you wrap all this up and then convey it to your friends, family, and peers. Frankenskies the movie is how you do that. You don't have to learn everything, but just to learn these little tidbits, these high bypass turbofan jet engines. For those conspiracy theorists out there, there was 9/11, and this plane hit the Pentagon, but the engines just the turbine, these 2-ton engines on both sides, essentially disappeared. They didn't even break the glass where it would have supposedly hit the Pentagon. I don't know if you've done research on that one, but they're just fans. There's not like this blasting of jet fuel like the engines were before the 60s, when they're actually like pushing the jet from the back, and they were not very efficient and this and that. So the high bypass turbofan is basically a propeller, and when you see the propeller, it makes sense. There's no heat or anything coming off of that, and you never see the con or the chemtrails. And that's this like polarized argument that was created by the powers that be to confuse us. The contrail and the chemtrail are actually nowadays the same thing. They're just different chemicals: barium or strontium or aluminum being mixed together, and they'll prime the sky, and then sometime after they prime the sky, they'll come and do these long trails, but sometimes they won't. They'll just keep spraying slowly but surely these little lines. Do you see any of the little or medium lines?
No, I was about to say, if that's the case, I got fooled a few days ago because I did see something with just coming out a little bit. Oh, I guess that actually would be a contrail, because I was actually watching the film and prep for this somewhere around there, and I was like, oh, well, I guess that would be a contrail, but maybe not then. So
So I don't talk about it in the movie because the movie came out in 2017, and at that stage in my evolution, I didn't know this. So I had to get really learned and actually just keep looking at the sky and see what was going on. But there's a document called the Tropospheric Aerosol Program. The document is called Tropospheric Aerosol Program, Department of Energy. So you can look it up, TAPDOE.PDF. And it's this 99-page document from the Department of Energy. And it's just before 9/11 in June 2001. This program is launched. And in it, they refer to the short trails, the supposed contrails, as the precursor gases. And it started to make sense to me. These are primer planes. They're spraying chemicals that later get mixed. Sometimes you can see them side by side. It's like, oh, wow, why is one really short and one really long? They're just mixing chemicals right in front of us. But yeah, the patents go back all the way to the 70s, and I started to really understand it more. Luckily, in Frankenskies, I don't really like dig down and say, this is a contrail, this is a contrail, because that argument is really polarizing and confusing in and of itself. And that's actually kind of a side note. If you want to learn about the whole thing, and what's essential is that there's stuff being done in the sky. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong about the big or long ones or anything like that. Like something's happening, and then once you start to learn about that, then you learn about this, like, well, actually, they're trying to normalize it to launch geoengineering. This is a thing, the dimming of the sky officially. There's a whole experiment going down with Bill Gates in Sweden this June in Kiruna, Sweden. If Bill Gates successfully dims the sun with this experiment, then they supposedly will move forward to dim the sun for us to save us from global warming. And I don't know what you think about that, but there's so many dystopian, predictive programming, what have yous, and I don't think that we need to act on global warming, because I don't think that what we're being told is realistic. When you learn about chemtrails and you learn about HARP technology and the mixing of the chemicals and zapping them with land-based radio frequency microwaves and stuff, they're heating the atmosphere to near the temperature of the sun, not telling us, creating heat waves, creating fires, creating drought, not saying anything about making rain, and then saying, oh, global warming, we got to do something about this. We're going to spray aluminum in the sky and dim your sun. You're welcome. Doesn't make any sense. If you know anything about greenhouse effect, like the light that gets in won't be able to get out, and they'll actually make heating if they put aluminum in the sky. What if it comes down in us? We don't want to breathe that in, the plants and the soil, and there's so many things wrong with it.
We were talking about the, what TV and movies do make us think. So most of us are like, oh, Mr. Burns tried that, right? In The Simpsons. In a different method,
and the
of course,
Matrix, and the Matrix too.
Yeah, that's certainly.
And I don't know if you've seen Snowpiercer. That's one to really look up. If you have you seen the movie Snowpiercer?
I actually just put a podcast for that out last Tuesday, so I watched it within the past couple of weeks.
And it starts off with them acting on global warming to spray the skies with basically, it looks like chemtrails, and they do it so bad that an ice age ensues, right?
Yeah, which when we were doing that one, I also was thinking about, way back in the 50s, Kurt Vonnegut writing about Ice Nine. So, this same sort of concept all the way back there. So, I mean, to me, it seems like if we are leaders of industry, trying not to, not to pollute so much seems like the biggest thing to do. But that seems to be the thing that they really don't want to do. Japan, Japan, I think in the 70s, industry here was just like ridiculous. There's lots of incidents of horrible pollution. So Japan has greatly cleaned up. Now, some of it is outsourcing their industry to like Thailand and things. So you give it to somebody else. That's not great. But the country itself, other than having tons of power lines everywhere, we don't have trash on the streets or things like that. I'm sure we're getting hit with some kind of pollution, and we'll probably get to that a little too. But yeah, just cleaning up your room, as I sit in my somewhat messy room, is a good thing to do.
I couldn't agree more. So back to Frankenskies and dimming the sun. A lot of people don't know about even the concept of geoengineering and how that it evolved from basically the spraying of chemicals in the sky to that being an experimental thing. Like, how can we make it rain? How can we make it not rain? How can we make hurricanes? There's all these different projects. The HAMP is the Hurricane Atmospheric Modification Project. Carbon soot was administered to the outer eye layer of hurricanes to see what it would do. And they thought maybe they'd quell it, and it exacerbated it and made crazy monster hurricanes, which led to the creation of Hurricane Katrina and all these sort of things. I know that sounds like craziness, but the government makes hurricanes and experiments on itself, on their people, to what ends. It's a crazy world. So these different things have evolved by experimenting in different ways on different storms and what have you, and on enemy populations. Like we do weather warfare on Iran. We did weather warfare on Vietnam. Flooded the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That's documented in the film. But the ongoing covert weather engineering on the people of Iran is something worth mentioning. And then now to normalize it and to tell everyone that we need geoengineering without even understanding it 100%. Like, what does that even mean exactly? The dimming of the sun. Yeah, that's how Mr. Burns, like you said, and like I just said, the Matrix. And when people have these things as a reference point in their psyche from a movie, right? It's predictive programming for a reason, because people are engineered to that being the first time it's been put into their consciousness. So when you bring it back up, they're like, well, it's not going to be as bad as the Matrix, right? And they're like, oh yeah, or they'll laugh at you and be like, oh, you mean like the Matrix? Yeah, that's not going to happen, because they have a reference point, and we live in like a ridicule society, ridicule culture kind of thing, where people can just dismantle your truth through pure ridicule, which is designed through the movies and the propaganda machines. It's pretty fascinating. And if you look at all the chemtrails, which are the lines in the sky, right? I mean, that debate about the talk about the chemtrail contrail thing, it's not really all that important, but it's interesting to put that in the consciousness, because the polarization of it isn't even important. That was done to divide us, right? And to get everyone like, oh no, it's just that, and oh, well, it's the atmospheric conditions and the barometric pressure, and oh, how hot is the engine? And the engine's not hot at all. Let's get to the point. So, anyways, the the lines in the sky are implanted in Disney movies, cartoons, video games, and even movies. Just like regular Hollywood movies. And for years, and even I've been told that digitally remastered movies like Jaws now have grid skies and whatnot, or somewhat engineered skies, like lines in the skies. Some sort of chemtrails are put in the movie to normalize it, for people to think that it's okay or normal or whatever. I watched the movie, Spike Lee movie, Do the Right Thing. Okay, the very end of Do the Right Thing, they're like looking off into the sunset or whatever, and it's just this crazy, like 30 lines of chemtrails. And that's the last scene. And the power that is when you've gone to the movie theater or whatever it is, like you've sat down and the whole time you've temporarily suspended your disbelief, and like you're being really impressionable, and you're implanted and programmed and all these things. And at the very end, for them to drop chemtrails on it, there's the movie Ants. I have a whole list of all the Pixar films. It's pretty unreal. And I mean, Pixar is even something else. They could make the skies nice and blue, but they drop these things in for the kids to make them think that this is totally normal.
Yeah, my friend he sent me my friend in Tokyo who sends me the photos sometimes. His last one actually was of his kid playing a video game. So it's like my 6-7-year-old kid's playing a video game. Oh, look, this is weird. So he caught it there. Unfortunately, I don't know what he just took the picture. Well, it's probably in lots of games, but
I think it's embedded and like purposely embedded in a lot of things to make it normalized for people to not think that there's anything to be seen there. And it's not always just engineering the weather or geoengineering. If you get like halfway through the movie Frankenskies, they document proof of experimenting on the city of St. Louis, just literally experimentation. With the aerosol program, different things can be administered. And then when you learn about it's kind of like a dystopian rabbit hole when it starts to get all connected. But if you just look at aluminum, take a very grounded approach to aluminum. I got a book called Conversations with the Aluminum Atom by a PhD that talks about aluminum in your deodorant. Okay. Aluminum, we should be detoxing aluminum. All right, there's different things, there's different ways to detox aluminum, but aluminum in general, we should not be exposing ourselves to it like we do. And then we have our cell phones, we put them in our bra, like aluminum in your deodorant plus cell phone in your bra equals breast cancer. Like those are all the cases of that. If you can not have aluminum in your deodorant, not put your phone in your bra, you're not microwaving aluminum in your body and stuff like that. So there's aluminum in the chemtrails, right? So if you can not get aluminum in your diet, not get the aluminum from the chemtrails because you're detoxing it or sweating it out with like a sauna or chelating it or just, mineralizing your body and being healthy or whatever, then you're not, getting a body with aluminum in it, which you don't want that chemical in your body, right? Like it leads to Alzheimer's, it leads to dementia. It mixes with different chemicals like mercury. I've seen video of mercury and aluminum mixing, and it turns into something that grows like 1 foot tall of just the two chemicals reacting. You don't want those two things interacting in your body, right? Mercury and aluminum. Nor do you want fluoride and aluminum. Fluoride and aluminum together mix in your brain, lead to dementia and stuff like that. And these are like these two-prong kind of attack where it's a slow thing where these two chemicals come together. And so you have to learn about your health and how this impacts you. But then you can be empowered by it by understanding it and learning, and then growing above it and like just having a more healthy diet or whatever it is that you can do to rise above these things, and educate yourself, like educate yourself with what aluminum does and how to not have aluminum in your body, because evidently there's too much aluminum in our environment.
I guess intuition's always good to follow, because I did this mostly out of being cheap, and hopefully this doesn't gross anyone out, but I found that you don't actually need most of the toiletry products. I think I probably haven't since 2014. I don't think I've used deodorant or shaving cream, and rarely, actually, you know what, the dentist told me that you don't need to use toothpaste, you just need to brush. So I started doing that, and then I was like, hey, wait, I don't really need deodorant either. So
Yeah, no,
just
I don't use any of those things, and I highly recommend rinsing your mouth with coconut oil in the morning. It balances the microorganisms in your mouth, and it makes basically like the good bacteria win and the bad bacteria die. I've even had a cavity, and I rinsed with coconut oil. The cavity went away. I don't use hardly any toothpaste. Maybe I brush like with toothpaste like once a week or something like that. But yeah, there's different, and I don't use shaving cream or anything like that. And I don't use chemical like even shampoo and whatnot, because I started to read the ingredients and read the things that are in different things, and I just adapted my body and my diet. I think everything that we put in our body is important. But back to movies, what kind of what are your favorite kind of things? Who's your favorite director, if you could? Or actually, do you like Beat Takeshi Kitano? You like that guy? He's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. I've seen a few of his. Of course, in Japan, he's better known as a comedian. Interestingly, because the ones that make it in America are usually the more like hard-boiled ones. So we think of him as kind of an action guy, but
Mhm.
no,
He
he's a,
hosted that funny show. I know that. So he was kind of a comedian when he hosted that show, the obstacle course show or whatever.
right. But that actually is his main claim to fame in Japan. So the
Like
movies are
stand
kind
up,
of
like
like,
stand up. Is he stand up?
yeah. The I think it's a downtown, the comedy duo. I think it's a duo. I don't remember. One thing is, I mean, the last thing that one, my Japanese is not good, but even if it was, the last thing that tends to translate is comedy. I've even
Yeah.
heard some like UK comedians where I'm like, I don't quite get it. There's a little bit of an accent thing going, a little bit of a a small cultural disconnect. It's almost the same. You can get most of it, but stand-up comedy, especially, like something like Red Dwarf, no problem. I can watch that. But I do find that interesting. My other podcast, one of I do one for the Twilight Zone, and I do one for sci-fi movies. That's why I just did Snowpiercer. So yeah, that's kind of my thing. I'm a pretty ardent Trekkie. So one of the things I tend to do with this podcast and with that one is, I want to talk to I want to have a place where like everyone can have a chat with each other, because that's important, because it's like, oh, you have the certain view, you have the certain view, and it's like I can't even like communicate with you, which they, living outside of America for quite a while, I think has helped where I don't tend to think too much that way. So, and I can sit here for my my room and talk to just about anybody with the power of Zoom. So that's kind of nice.
I love it. Speaking of sci-fi, I watched Demolition Man just recently. Have you seen that one lately? It's pretty epic if you realize like all the different predictive things that they kind of predicted.
Not lately, but it's definitely on the list. So it's one I
So
want to get to.
there's social distancing. Arnold Schwarzenegger becomes like the governor or whatever, even the president, I think. But that was before he became the governor of California. There's a lot of different things, AI and social credit system, and like it's pretty fascinating. It's a pretty good one if you like that kind of stuff. I've been getting into a lot of good movies recently. Network was really something nice, but it's not a sci-fi. Of course, Terry Gilliam, and oh yeah. So who's your favorite director?
Oh, I do like Terry Gilliam quite well. I don't quite want to say Kubrick. I guess my traditional answer, I haven't seen his last three films, but especially 10 years ago, I would have told you Wes Anderson.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. Yeah, the artistic design. I mean, I've seen all of last three. You haven't seen his last three. So did you see Grand Budapest Hotel? Is that in there? You seen that
That's
one?
the last one I saw. So
Okay, yeah, that's a
yeah.
great one. Yeah, and then what was after that? Either way, yeah, he's something else, and the artistic, um, just the art direction there is something. And yeah, Scorsese and the Coen brothers, there's some great stuff out there. It seems like unfortunately movies aren't necessarily getting better. I mean,
Well,
out here at least, we have like Netflix and Bedbox, and it's just like flooded with not very good stuff. But I guess there's got to be something in the midst. There's a silver lining. You know about good movies or good movies out there?
yeah. In
New
Japan,
one.
like, yeah, as far as going out and seeing the movies, it tends to be just like the big action blockbusters. So, it's kind of the what 10 episode TV format. I watch very little TV other than the Star Trek I get obsessed with. Again, I'm a pretty ardent Trekkie. One I really enjoyed recently, which I did not expect to, is the Cobra Kai TV series. Based from the Karate Kid, and it's the Johnny and what's Ralph Macchio, Daniel, 40 years later. So
That's cool. You said Trekkie like old school or like next generation?
all the way through. So
Okay, cool.
like I
Yeah,
said,
I love Next Generation. I mean, you're 1 year older than me, and that's like a lot at that kind of evolution of Star Trek, in my opinion. You know what I mean? There's like a couple like people that were just a couple years older than me that liked the older Star Trek, but I grew up on Next Generation and loved it, and was really into it, and all the movies and all that sort of stuff. So that's been like that was a highlight for me. Actually, I watched Roseanne and then Next Generation Star Trek like every night with my mom. That was like this like thing, back when TV and no internet and all that sort of stuff before the changeover. But yeah, so in terms of documentaries, Frankenskies I think is a must see because of I don't think there's anything that grounded of an approach to the weather engineering and chemtrails and stuff out there. Even though at the end it does leave a lot of questions, and I hope that I can answer those in the sequel, Frankenskies 2. I know I'm genius, but it's called Frankenskies 2 Climate Chains, like shackles. And while we're recommending documentaries, um, I don't know if everyone out there has seen the movie Zeitgeist. Have you seen that one?
I've heard the name bandied about a bit, but I have not seen that one yet.
So that's an interesting one worth throwing around. It's really conspiracy. It's in three parts, but that kind of got me thinking about different things. And then also, as far as like government conspiracies in 9/11, there's one called Loose Change about 9/11, and that's interesting as well. Oh, also a book based on a book that I really liked. This one, since we're talking about movies and whatnot, and it's hard nowadays, but if it can pique your interest and make you think, it's amazing. Have you seen Botany of Desire or read the book?
No, that's actually, I don't think I've heard of that. So do tell.
Yeah, so it's in four parts, and it talks about how humans impact plants, the evolution of plants. So it goes through potatoes and tulips and a few other plants and the history and how humans in them have interacted. And it's done quite well. It's based on a book, but it's adaptation, and the documentary's something else.
I
Highly
have heard
recommend that one.
I have heard something along the lines of like flowers are quite a recent development.
Yeah, and the story of the Dutch tulip and the story of the tulip is something. It really is. It's fascinating. And I went to film school, and I have this, like, I've got a couple movies that I'm not super proud of, but I have this one script, like a short story, like 20, 30-minute creative piece that I'd like to make and not just be like the conspiracy guy. Because I've got this clothing line as well. I line stuff with silver. So it's actually big over there. Have you ever heard of maternity aprons that are made of silver to protect the
Yeah,
pregnant?
we have things like was it negative ion, like air conditioners, things like that. It is a big thing for that out here. And actually, I thought I'd go into that topic a little bit because I have some, I have some relatively firsthand experience with I think with that sort of thing. So, not basically, I guess I don't know, irradiating myself because I do have the bad habit of keeping my phone in my front left pocket in a case of its own. But I think it was about 4 years ago where I just developed a strange infection there, and I had to go like 3 different doctors, and I think they just gave me a bunch of like saline and it went away. But I was like, that's probably because I'm keeping my phone there. So that was bad news. And this is worse. Just to put it out, I'm quite healthy at the moment, but about 2 years ago, I actually had a couple tumors. One was here, one was like in front, and one was in the back, and it's right how you hold a phone to your head. So
Oh, wow.
I only talk to people on speakerphone now. But I'm like,
Wow, good for you. Yeah, and do you think that it's from your phone? It was?
well, again, where they were kind of corresponds with how you would hold. I'm left-handed, right? So it corresponded
Mhm.
pretty much to where the phone would be to my head. So I'm like, I really wonder if that's, I mean, if maybe it wasn't the prime cause, I'm gonna guess it had something to do with it. So
Mhm. Well,
you know, if,
there's been studies, and then one study that's very hard to argue with is women that have little tumors in their breast, and it's shaped in a right angle, the shape of their phone, where their phone goes in their bra. So they'll have like 4 or 5 little tumors in a right angle where their phone is, like ding, 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 ding. So that's hard to really argue that it's not the phone, in my opinion. But it's easy to not want to hate your smartphone. People love their phones. So it's something that I encourage people to just try to take a break from. And I've been reading a lot of Rudolf Steiner. He's a German author from like 1930s and whatnot. And he said that in this time that we're entering now, that we really need to focus on having 50-50, half and half, 50%. If I know, and some people, like people in Tokyo, you bet your friend in Tokyo would be like, what, really? Half of your time, try to make it not with technology, not with your phone, not with your Wi-Fi or anything like that. So half your time in a natural world, just meditating or reading a book or whatever, or jogging, whatever you can do. We need to find that balance because there's a pervasiveness and a pushing towards technology even more and more and more recently. And and I'm glad that you have that awareness that you're not holding it to your head anymore. And I'm glad, God bless. I don't know. What did you got? Do you got them removed? You got those removed?
I had to get full on chemotherapy to get rid of those. So, and it was a thing
Wow.
because I'm like, man, I already know putting I really don't want to be putting on these chemicals in my body, but it's like people around you, there's only so much of a choice. But actually, there were things that I noticed that were very nice in Japan. The American medical system very much has the rituals. You show up, you put on a gown, they
Mm,
push you around in a wheelchair, even though you're fine to walk, things like that. Where
mm,
while I was hanging out in my cancer ward, I was just wearing like like my regular slacks and a Beach Boys t-shirt and stuff like that. Actually, I had to wear a Beach Boys shirt for like 3 days in a row because I had a drip in my arm. But
mm.
So yeah, I did come through fine. In this case, like I actually saw my doctor every day, which I understand in America is not something very common. So um I didn't want to pump all the chemicals in, but unfortunately there weren't really other options available. And and unfortunately the people that were in charge, even if maybe is a better way, but at least I was going through the system with like pretty good people, so that was nice. Other than but yeah, was it, I don't remember specific ones, but there's one that they call the Red Devil because it's super crazy toxic. And and it's only been the past month, like yeah, your hair comes back, it's kind of curly for a while. So things I have done to try and achieve that 50-50%. Some of it's cheating because I'll be listening to a podcast as I'm walking around, but I actually have built in about my commute is much longer than it should be because I do an awful lot of walking. I'm in the mountains, there's rice fields, it's a nice place to walk. That's why I'm keeping my eye on the sky also, because it's always right there.
And airplane mode is your friend. Like about airplane mode on your
Oh
phone,
yeah.
right?
When unless I'm actively using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, it's always off now.
Awesome. And I recommend maybe not doing Bluetooth. Try to get the cord if you can, because that's like microwave.
The only time I use Bluetooth is when I'm on the train and I want to use my iPad, which doesn't have any connection. So I'll connect it to my phone, but I probably do that once every 2 months. So my
Right
Bluetooth
on.
is almost never on. I don't use headphones with Bluetooth. I made sure to get I have an upgrade from the iPhone that still has a headphone jack. And I'm in rice fields. I don't even have headphones on. I'm just playing it in the open air usually.
Nice. And then for people listening that live in the city, it's important to know about grounding. You can even get grounding mats. But learning about the concept of grounding, or it's called earthing, we get a buildup. We're electrical beings. We're beings of frequency. And our best tuned body, with all of our organs tuned perfectly, is to a frequency that is called the Schumann resonance, which is 7.8 hertz, about 8 cycles per second. And when we're around Wi-Fi or 5G or 4G or anything like that, or even LED lights that flash on and off so fast that we can't see that they're off, but that's how they're energy efficient. LED lights are flickering on and off really fast. That dismantles and offsets our nervous system and stuff like that. And we have dirty electricity that gets built up in our bodies because we have rubber shoes on and we don't have the electricity going into the earth. So it's important to learn about earthing or grounding, or maybe the word in Japanese for it, or maybe there's even like a whole thing in Japanese about it. I bet there is, where you just put your feet in the grass. That's it, or in a stream or on the earth, and you get balanced and you get back to the frequency of the earth, and you shed that dirty electricity, and you get back the negative ions, the good energy. But that dirty electricity, you can measure it, and it's bouncing around in our bodies because we pick it up from the power lines and our phones and all that sort of stuff. And if you can, and if you can just get in the rhythm of doing it daily or weekly or whatever you want to try to learn about, or even find a podcast on or a book or whatever, earthing or grounding, or I'm sure there's a whole thing, like I said, in Japanese about it. And then once you do that, you reduce inflammation in your body and reduce inflammation in your body. And then you can, the rest is a happy, healthy life once you start to reduce inflammation in your body. It's very important.
Yeah, I think there's a forest therapy thing that has some popularity in Japan for that. So having not tried it myself, again, I'm trying mostly to throw my personal experiences at you because, well, that no one can tell me that didn't happen, right? Again, on my speakerphone, I was talking to a friend of mine, and walking along the street, and I don't remember why really wanted to stop at a certain place, and then I just started to like feel terrible, right? And I looked, and on one side of the street's a solar power farm. On the other side of the street's a transformer station. I'm like, you know what? Maybe standing here is and then I kind of walked away, and then I felt like a little better. And then as an experiment, I went back in and I was like, yeah, there seems to be something like not cool in this little spot between the the solar power station and the transformer, which I mean, that's not a big thing, but and again, sometimes one of the reasons I turn my Wi-Fi off is sometimes I feel a little bit antsy when it's on.
Yeah, and maybe you're the canary in the coal mine, and maybe you're slightly EMF sensitive, or but maybe that's like a blessing in disguise, so that you don't expose yourself to too much of it, because obviously you're sensitive if you're getting a sore in your pocket and whatnot. I mean, I'm wearing my silver runner pants that I made. I'm really excited about these, and I also have Ethernet and all of that. I don't do wireless radiation at all because my personal experience is that I started suffering heart palpitations from a smart meter. We have these smart meters in North America. I don't know if you guys have these, but they're attached to your home and they'll emit a radio signal, like a microwave signal that can go to a cell tower 30 miles away. And some of them are designed to emit the signal telling how much electrical utility usage your electricity is using. And they'll emit it every like 7 seconds. And every 7 seconds, it's like a heart palpitation for me. I started becoming sensitive to it because it was on the other side of the wall from where I slept. Not everyone has it right next to them. It's different everywhere. What you said about the solar and all of the different the transmitter and the all of the different dirty electricity there, that's really important if you live right next to something like that. It can lead to like childhood leukemia or leukemia. You know, these things are impactful. And so many of these environmental toxins, they are invisible. And because we cannot see them, we don't understand them. Like if we could see the radiation coming off of our phone, and you could see that if you just go like 30 feet away, it doesn't impact you, you know, because it's like light, but it dissipates very quickly. The light coming off of your phone, that is the radiation that absorbs into you or your child or whatever it is, but we can't see it. The light coming off that cell tower, you know, or the dirty electricity coming off of whatever it may be, we can't see it. The radiation coming off the Wi-Fi router, it's like light as well, but we just can't see the light. It's all based on the curvature of our eyes, really, how big our eyes are. If our eyes were a little bigger in curvature, we could see the infrared or ultraviolet. We just see red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, Roy G. Biv, they call it, right? But that's just based on the curvature of our eyes. And because we can't see ultraviolet, and because we cannot see infrared, we don't really understand it. You know, we don't even get that it's all around us, this color spectrum that we don't get. There's colors that we don't see. So there's also other light that's like radiation that impacts us, that absorbs into us slowly but surely. We have to slowly understand it if we're going to be around it more and more, you know, especially with our children being around it more and more. And we're handing them iPads and we don't understand that at least it should be turned off at night. You know, we have to learn about balance and honor the children in it. You know, I mean, this show was started off about Frankenskies in my movie, but learning about one thing puts you on this frequency of truth, you know, and these other truths are there, and you can't just deny it. You know, if you have this gut discernment that you shouldn't have that phone next to your head, especially after taking all that chemo and stuff, you're not going to do it again because it would be an insult to your soul, right? You know, and other people have similar situations that once they learn something, then it's like, okay, well, maybe I won't have that Wi-Fi router next to the baby's bed, you know what I mean? Or whatever. You start to learn little things, and then you have a happy, healthy baby and stuff like that. It's little things that lead to like bigger things, bigger epiphanies and bigger knowledge and bigger growths and all that stuff. Is 2 a lucky number in Japan? Because today is Tuesday here and it's 2/22/2022.
Yeah, I got off the train last night at exactly, you know, military time, 22:22, and made sure to take the little snap.
Nice.
Actually, let me grab my phone really quick. Ironically, I want to see if I still have two. What is 4 is the unlucky number in Japan. I'm sitting here trying to think what is the lucky. 4 because 4 it's Ishni-san, she is death. So a lot of times they'll say yon instead, like another word for 4. So I had a 3-year-old student yesterday counting the people in the classroom, you know, each the son, and then points to me and says she, and the other 2 kids are like, ah, and then yon. So that's the unlucky one. Yeah. I'm trying to see talk about my friend Tokyo. He's sends me some photos. I mean, of course, this is here's his most recent sending me of a chemtrail. If you can see it, I don't think you can, but uh, he works in Shinjuku, like one of the central places in Tokyo, and they had been putting up these towers, and he shot
Oh
me.
yeah.
He sent me some
5G.
photos. Yeah, the new 5G. These weird little kiosks of things.
At ground level.
At ground level, like just all over the
Mm,
street. So
wow.
unfortunately, it looks like I have to tap to download too many things to find it, but one try. But yeah, anyway, yeah. That is it. Let's see if we can bring that up. I'll just have to keep in mind to edit a touch here. I won't download, probably because I have my stuff turned off. But yeah, it's these kiosks which have like very Orwellian looking signs on them, and with social distance signs and stuff, and which honestly in Japan a lot of that, except on the trains, people did that anyway. You kind of keep your personal space anyway in Japan. I'm still, they want us to mask up at work, but the fact is in Japan, it's kind of annoying when you're not sick, but when you are sick, you were already expected to wear a mask the whole time. So like
I was just talking about that with a buddy, that even in South America, in Latin American countries, and also in Asian countries, it was just kind nature and common practice. If you're sick, you wear the mask, but not if you're not sick. That whole idea is totally backwards, in my opinion. So that's I lost my. I think that it's very fascinating. Oh yeah, in Asia the differences in the culture. So the 5G infrastructure, they hide it in different ways in different countries, and it's more accepted by different cultures because more cultures, especially like Korea and maybe Japan, they're more like tech savvy, more tech generation, especially the next generation, the youth are more tech oriented, let's just say. I've noticed, I think, at least, especially in the major cities. And this 5G is very fascinating. I don't think it's very safe, but it definitely does not honor privacy. It does not honor privacy. And the reason that they need to have these stations at ground level is because the signal does not go very far. It's a very strong signal that absorbs into everything that it hits. So they have to have repeaters on every single block, like every 500 feet to have the real 5G millimeter kind of carrier wave. It's measured in millimeters. The carrier wave is measured in millimeters. So it can oscillate and like it'll be between 1 and 4 millimeters. Okay. And that's how big the wave is. Right now, the carrier waves for 4G are much larger, and for Wi-Fi, it's much larger. It's like measured in centimeters, not millimeters. So to get so much information, so many oscillations, like 60 megahertz, to get so many oscillations per second to carry so much data, has to be very small carrier wave that cannot travel very far at all. It absorbs into everything it hits, every tree, every person, every building, people. It absorbs into them. So they have to have the phones repeating the signal, becoming little cell towers. They have to have those repeater boxes. Over here, they have trees disguised as cell towers and all these different things. But it's most easily rolled out in like dense cities. So I think more dense cities are going to see it at first. And I would think that over time, we're going to see health impacts and maybe not very many much. I think fertility could go down for men and women, for sperm and women's ability, because these very small millimeter carrier waves, they impact reproductive organs because they're very small too, basically. If that makes sense.
Yeah. My thing I here is like to have you say your piece and not be a devil's advocate. But since I was talking to my coworker, co-host last night, and I was pointing out, well, gee, it's like we all live in our own little 5G environments at home now anyway. I mean, maybe some of us don't, but his point was, he's a gamer, so he's got the Wi-Fi ready to Twitch stream and all that. And a lot of us have. I guess there is maybe when you're walking down the street, it's nice to get out of the situation, but and if you're just always surrounded, that's pretty not great.
Well, the tech right now is different than what's unraveling. So the 4G and the Wi-Fi and all this. So imagine being able to see. Well, it's hard to really explain because you can't see it, but it's a wave. So okay, so light waves that we see, they're measured in nanometers, and based on the size of the carrier wave, it's a different color for us. And an orange light wave, it's a little bigger, it's red, it's a little bigger, it's infrared, and we can't even see it. And those are tending to be harmless, the bigger waves. The blue waves of light, like if it's smaller, if it's a smaller wave than blue, it's ultraviolet, and we can't see that. And that absorbs in our skin and can absorb and cause cancer. And just the difference in size of the carrier wave based on whether it impacts us a lot or a little, right? It's based on the size of the wave. So right now, Wi-Fi is like 30 centimeters, the carrier wave. And that's big. And these carrier waves can go through brick, can go through us. Like, okay, like let's just back up for just a little educational purposes. We have AM radio waves, FM radio waves. AM radio waves are 100 feet. I'm just going to talk in not metric, sorry. So an AM radio wave is so big at 100 feet that its peak as it's going like a wave, like in the ocean, like these waves, it's 100 feet tall, and it goes through people and trees and buildings, and it doesn't absorb into them when it hits them because they're really big. It's really big. And if we could see it, it would be like this light that travels really far. And you can carry information on it, like AM radio stations, right? And we can tune in our AM radio anywhere, but we're not going to get cancer from that AM radio wave. But we're all in. So I'm going back to your co-host metaphor. We're all around the AM radio waves all the time, but they don't impact us because they're 100 feet tall. We're not 100 feet tall. Doesn't matter. We're not in that spectrum, basically. So FM radio waves are 10 feet tall. We're not 10 feet tall. It doesn't impact us. We can tune in FM, all these different FM channels. We can tune in. All that information is going through us all the time. We're in a soup of it. We're also in a soup of Roy G. Biv, light from the sun. It doesn't impact us that much unless you get too much of the UV, way too much of it, and it absorbs and you get some burn, skin cancer, all that sort of stuff. Different light, different size matters. The size of the light matters. So all the way down from FM to 3G to 4G to here we are with like Wi-Fi and 4G and Bluetooth and all that sort of stuff. It's still utilizing carrier waves that are rather large compared to 5G. When we start immersing ourselves in 5G, it makes it so that children that are conceived, born, and raised in this 5G environment may not be able to conceive when they're adults. Watching the movie Handmaid's Tale, it's or Children of Men is also another dystopian movie where this actually comes true. The 1 millimeter size carrier wave, the width of a penny is 1.5 millimeters. So when you're developing as a fetus in your mommy's tummy, right, and you're a boy or a girl, as you're developing, if you're being bombarded by a 1 millimeter carrier wave that absorbs into you, when you're a little fetus and you're getting bigger and bigger, when you're developing your reproductive organs and they're 1 millimeter in size and they're being impacted by that 1 millimeter carrier wave, it's highly likely that that person might be born and come into the world without the ability to procreate, meaning their sperm cell count is 0. They don't have eggs as a woman. And it's just like, unfortunately, according to the research, this is what I'm learning, right? And it's not the same as what we're going through right now. Like right now, it doesn't impact us as much based on the size of the carrier wave. It's hard to explain. It's easier to look at like a picture of the electromagnetic spectrum. It has pictures of the like people and buildings and bees, and it shows like how the size of X-rays versus gamma rays versus the little bit of our light spectrum that we can see, and what the difference between non-ionizing and ionizing radiation. It was fascinating when I went to Asia to research my clothing line, because I was coming over there asking people about EMF radiation, EMF, right? And the difference between, you know, radiation and non-ionizing radiation and radiation. But in Asia, from what I gathered, it's just called radiation. Radiation is radiation. And like the
Sounds about right.
radiation off the phone, radiation off of nuclear power plants, just radiation. But over in the West, they call it EMF, and it gives it this like fancy term. And they differentiate between radiation that you can feel and radiation that you cannot feel, heating your body and not heating your body. So if it heats you and you can feel it, it's called ionizing. And if it doesn't heat you and you can't feel it, but it's still accumulating in your body, which would be what happened to your, maybe how you got tumors, can't feel it, or the thing in your leg, you can't feel it, but it slowly accumulates over time, right? I liken it to a tuna slowly eating little organisms and slowly building heavy metal or mercury. It's because it's high on the food chain. It's bioaccumulating the small metals from the small fish over time. But that small fish, they don't eat all those little things in the food chain. They don't have all that, bioaccumulated heavy metals in it. Why people don't eat tuna. It's the same. You can apply that metaphor as to like how we accumulate radiation in our body slowly, but we can't feel it. It's called ionizing radiation. In the West, we differentiate. In the East, they don't differentiate as much. And I think that that's healthy and maybe not so healthy at the same time. But I think if we could just see it, we would wrap our heads around it. But yeah, it's important to play devil's advocate and to think about all of this stuff. I think we're going into uncharted territories, especially with the children. We weren't born, think about what we were born into. We weren't born into any of this.
We're the last people that remember not having an internet.
Exactly.
And even that's hard to remember, isn't it?
So we went out and played and caught. Oh, did you have fireflies?
Oh yeah, Georgia, sure.
Nice. Do you have them there?
Yes. What's Hotaru? I'm trying to remember the name. Yeah, it's actually a pretty big thing. If you watch some animes, you'll often see like a little firefly scene. Partly because they're trying to show off their animation skills, and also because it's a thing in Japan.
Oh, one of my favorite movies is Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke and all of those
Ghibli. Yeah. No, it's funny. One of my friends, when I first came to Japan, is like, "Do you think you might be able to find some Totoro stuff?" I'm like, they have entire stores for that here. So awesome. Like, what do you want is more of the question. Especially once you said wrap around your head. I was here for the 2011 quake and Fukushima. I was about 200 miles away, I guess. No, maybe it's 200 kilometers, 150 miles, something like that. Anyway, we did get a few days off work, but when the power plant went, I was leaving work and my boss is like, "Here's a towel, wrap it around your head on the way home." So that was kind of weird.
A wet towel.
Yeah.
So like, to absorb the radiation, keep it from
yeah. And so that's one of my most dystopian feeling moments ever. So again, between the radiation from, because we were downwind that particular day, so who knows? Good, I have a kid already, I guess.
Wow,
yeah, but I guess we do need to wind down and part because I got to shower and go to work. But we, of course, you mentioned your movie, which actually I think, did I just watch it on YouTube?
It got pulled from YouTube, but it's, if you go to frankenskies.com or frankenskiesthemovie.com, I've got both of those now. It directs you to the Vimeo. It's also on BitChute and other platforms, but unfortunately, it's been taken down from YouTube just recently.
Okay, because I felt like I just watched it on YouTube, which is almost surprising at this point. But
yeah, it was there.
I'm just kind of double checking, but yeah, it maybe somebody put it back, which.
Oh, there's other people.
Yeah, okay. I watched.
There's Garcia. Garcia has a one that comes up in the search from a while.
Yeah, I'm looking at the view numbers, and yeah, the one I watched just has a few, so I guess someone just put it up.
Yeah, people share it. It's funny. I tried to type in geoengineering documentary in YouTube, and the movie Geostorm came up. I'm like, okay, sure, YouTube, thank you very much. Yeah, but no, I couldn't even find mine when I looked before, so I've kind of given up on that platform, unfortunately.
Go ahead and plug your clothing line, I guess. Actually, thanks, because when you came on, I was like, is that going to be his main goal? And if it is, it's fine, but you barely mentioned it, so you should probably mention it now.
Oh yeah, I've got a really amazing source in China that makes this. It's the best EMF clothing in the West, as far as I know. I think it's the best EMF clothing in the world. There's reasons behind it, but the one big obstacle was it's not very breathable as a hoodie or a shirt. But we have a fusion process where we have a cotton polyester blend and the silver, and we fuse them together so it's a breathable material. When I first started making with a cotton shirt and then the silver material and having two layers, not breathable. It hardly works. It's too hot. But this new technology that we have is amazing. We have hoodies and the best texting gloves in the world. I'll call them the best EMF texting gloves in the world, and they're antiviral, antimicrobial because of silver, anti-radiation. You can text. They're amazing. We have hats and baby blankets and maternity stuff, maternity aprons. I hear it's really popular over there, the maternity stuff, maternity wear for pregnancy. We use all silver. I hear over there also steel is used to make steel maternity wear. I don't know how popular it is in Japan, but I hear it's Korea, Japan, and China is what I witnessed from my research. But yes, Spero, it's a Latin word. Spero is my brand. So speroprotectionclothing.com. And I hope that you can check us out. Yeah, it's amazing because I do sell in Hong Kong and Japan, Tokyo. I sell my product. I get it made in China. I get it shipped to me in the United States, and I sell it right back to Hong Kong and at a good price. And I have blankets, and I'm making everything affordable. And I call myself the best in the world because I strive to be that. So very competitive with it all, like trying to come out with style. And my goal is to come out with a nice clothing, children's clothing line for the children, for like teens and especially youth, not something cheesy, but something that they'll actually wear. And that's my goal with that. So if you want to give us some love on Instagram, it's Spero, which is a Latin word for hope, Spero gear, Spero gear on Instagram. Also sperogear.com will take you to the website, and frankenskies.com, like I said. And then I have another website, Actual Activists. Actualactivists.com is a bunch of different truths and health, and there's a daily blog and stuff on there. It's a lot of information on one website. So if you're stuck on the train or something, looking for something to do, or if you just want to look at the one little daily truth of the day because you're on the bus or on the toilet or something, it's a great website. I hope that you can check it out. That's like really my baby. And on there you can find Frankenskies and my other projects and what have you. And if you're on Facebook, I'm on there, Matt Landman. I have like almost 60,000 followers, and I do get censored, but I'm still alive and well on there. And other platforms, I'm there too. And if you want to communicate or ask me questions about Frankenskies, I'm also happy to send people DVDs. I like having DVDs in people's living rooms, physical things. It's very important in this world to have physical things, especially books. I've been buying a lot of books recently. That's a whole nother story. And yeah, please reach out to me, frankenskies@gmail.com. I reply to everyone. And thanks for even just thinking about the difference of the clouds and chemtrails, and maybe watching my movie or watching the beginning of it, because it's important to think outside the box. And it doesn't have to be like a crazy conspiracy or anything like that. It's just questioning the official narrative and knowing that everything has two sides, and even the official narrative has two sides. So it's important to see, what's being hidden and whatnot. And it's a good expose, and I think it's grounded and very like balanced. I've seen all sorts of documentaries that are really out there, and this one I can show my grandmother and show my coworker, and I think that you can too. So don't be afraid to watch it and share it with your friends. Thank you so much.
Two quick things. I do most of my reading on a Kindle now, or actually on an iPad using the Kindle app. But just in case the world does fall apart, I have like a bunch of I printed from the internet books, because it's hard to buy actual books in Japan. Even Amazon, the shipping's wild. So I'm prepared if the grid goes out, at least I'll have something to read, unless my glasses break Twilight Zone style, except I don't wear glasses.
Yeah, I've been buying all sorts of interesting books that I haven't dug my teeth or heart or eyes or soul into quite yet, in case we have an EMP or something like that. I'll be excited to. I've got like a whole bunch of Wilhelm Reich and Rudolf Steiner and Buckminster Fuller and narratives and Fahrenheit 451 and all sorts of interesting stuff about herbs and I've gotten really out there. I encourage people to buy physical books because during the first lockdown, what I witnessed was the children had no um, access to information, like the bookstores and the libraries and everything, and all they really had was like Amazon. But if you don't have if you're a child and you don't have any reference point, how can you look up anything when your channels of information have been limited to just like what can you look up on Amazon and buy? It doesn't compute, and we need to honor the children by having a little library for all of them. So even like kids books and stuff, I've been getting those as well. So
Yeah, a couple weird things is I we have not had a full lockdown in Japan. I've the only time I stopped going to work was when I had to go to the hospital for the aforementioned chemo. My daughter never took an online lesson. She didn't go to school for a month, but uh, now it does happen. Things spiked in late January, I think, and they've got us teaching like half of our lessons online again. What sometimes it's funny, it's really weird. I'll have two kids in the room because their parents don't have good tech or whatever, or they don't want to do it that way. And then I'll have like a couple kids like on the iPad. So it's a bit of a teaching challenge. But honestly, I'm like, oh, I'm glad a couple kids are in the room, to be perfectly honest.
yeah, of course.
And just the last thought for what you said was for the maternity stuff, they do it very differently here. There's things done better in Japan, things done worse, but for women giving birth, they don't just, I mean, they have like special hospitals for that. They're not necessarily giving birth in the hospital with all the sick people, and they stay there for like a week.
Nice.
My wife is Japanese, and we were living in Atlanta when my daughter was born, and I think my wife was traumatized by the American birth process, or just shocked by it, and shocked about how fast they got her out the door. So, in the hospital food,
Everything's a business over here. It's really insulting, honestly. Even healthcare is a business, and a business wants you to come back, and there's all these layers to it all. But I definitely deeply respect and regard the Asian in general, especially Japanese, but Asian culture and overall, for the respect for elders and healthcare and a lot of things like that.
yeah, like when I was in the hospital, the food did get boring. It is institutional food, but it was relatively healthy stuff, and it wasn't bad. It was certainly perfectly edible. It's more like I'm partly I'm a picky eater, but yeah. And my wife was like, they just brought me like a hamburger at the American hospital, so she was kind of shocked. Just real quickly, this podcast is Aural Hygiene. It's Aural Hygiene Pod on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. On Patreon, we're under Podcastius, where we make lots of podcasts, including ones about sci-fi films, The Twilight Zone, Pokemon, and Monster Hunter if you're a gamer. That's my podcasting partner, not me. I'm not so much of a gamer, but Matt, thanks for coming on today. Again, like, we're not like a conspiracy podcast, but when I first brought it up, I was like, should I do chemtrails? And it was like, well, it's not the most controversial thing right now. So it was a few years ago, but maybe now is the time to actually kind of sit and have a conversation about that, like, anyone can listen to, and the movie that anyone can watch without feeling like they've, I'm weird. I'll go down real deep rabbit holes, but I want to have conversations that everyone can learn something from. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And maybe I should say, like, to not leave people hanging too much, the end goal is to be able to have a narrative where if the weather's engineered and these weather events can be reoccurring, then it's this Hegelian dialectic where they can have this problem, have people react in fear, and then offer them the solution. It seems diabolical, but unfortunately, it's kind of what's going on. So when you can wrap your head around like the control of the weather and the weather being manipulated, a lot of questions do come up, like the who, why, what, where, when. But to understand that they have an end goal, and it's just manipulation of the minds of the public is really what it is. I don't know. It's hard. We could do lots of shows about it. Maybe one day you'll have me back on. And if people have any questions, please reach out to me. It's a really dense subject. Maybe just watch Frankenskies and then go from there. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, cheers.